Welcome to Tech in the Right Direction, the podcast. This week, I'll be speaking with Brett Martin. Brett co founded Kumospace, the new favorite collaboration tool used by over 20,000 remote and hybrid teams. His platform brings businesses virtual offices with customizable environments and interactive features where employees show higher productivity when compared to their in person counterparts. Welcome to the show, Brett. I'm so excited to have you on our Mentors That Make a Difference segment of the show. Thank you so much for being an ally for women in technology. Tell us more about you.
Hi, well, I'm Brett Martin. I'm the co-founder of Kumospace. It's a virtual office where remote and distributed teams show up to work every day. And I'm also the co-founder and general partner of Charge Ventures. It's a premium pre-seed venture capital based out of New York City. And then finally, I'm Moonlight as an adjunct professor of analytics and machine learning at Columbia Business School.
Wow, you are busy. Lots of things going on. So what are some of the critical problems your company is looking to solve for your customers?
Well, Kumospace solves the problem of everyone's working from home and is more productive than ever, but they feel increasingly isolated and disconnected from their coworkers. And that leads to poor, cross-departmental communication, dropped balls. It leads to attrition ultimately, and unhappy employees. And then finally, it makes it pretty hard to manage and figure out how to, who needs support and how to give it to them. And it's hard to find mentors and support on the other side. So Kumospace solves those problems by giving remote teams a place to show up and work together. And, a lot of the same benefits you got in the office. Office wasn't just for doing work. It was for socializing. It was for building relationships. It was for getting mentorship. It was for, managing and being managed. So that's what Kumospace solves.
That's amazing. I'd love to learn more about how it brings employees together and less disconnected, less isolated. That would be really, really great. And I think with the pandemic, now that we have more remote teams than ever before, this is so timely.
Yeah, we built Kumospace to solve our own problem. We have a fully remote team, and we realized that people really liked working together, but they felt disconnected. They wanted stronger bonds, and they were having sometimes hard time communicating, across engineering to marketing. And so we realized, wow, we need to build a better tool for this. And so, yeah, we started working out of our own virtual office, and then we decided to start selling it to other folks.
That's the best way to create a product, because you know the challenges internally that you were facing, and so you're solving for those, and that's great. That's really nice. So, as you know, this podcast is focused on bridging the employment, pay, and culture gap for women in technology. What are you seeing in the industry?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I wear two hats. I'm the co-founder of Kumospace, but then I also am a venture capital investor through Charge. And so we have a pretty large percentage. I think it's like almost over 50% of our founding teams have a female co-founder or C-level exec. And so, I don't know. I don't know how everyone is finding so few women-owned businesses to invest in, because it seems like there's plenty to me.
That's good that you're seeing that. We love to hear that.
I think that remote work is actually a huge opportunity for women, in the sense that, women bear a disproportionate share of household activities and childcare activities and all these other things. And I think that women have always been doing, two jobs in that sense, but sort of the constraints of going to an office, made it quite challenging, and it ended up pulling a lot of women out of the workforce. And so I think one of the benefits of remote work is the flexibility to be able to do both. I mean, it's not fair that women have to do it, but that's never stopped women before. And so now, with the flexibility of remote work, it's just so much easier. You can work from home. We have We just hired a new principal on our team for the venture capital fund, and she's on calls and she's got her daughter on her lap sometimes, and that's totally okay. And so that wouldn't have been possible in an office.
Right.
And so
No,
I think
that's
there's
so
just
true.
a massive opportunity.
I agree. And, just simple things like the commute, you take out that, you may have taken out 2 hours of their day, that you've given back to them now to put dinner in the oven or take care of the kids or do whatever extra they need to in addition to working. So you are so correct on that. Remote work is really made it a little bit easier. And so many women had left workforce during the pandemic, and we hope to see them all start to come back.
100%. So I actually think they come back, but maybe they come back in a different form or to different jobs that are actually more different jobs and different employers that are more open-minded and amenable about the type of work that what is required actually to get the job done.
Right. No, that's so true. Now, thank you for being an ally. Thank you for always supporting women and being that voice that sometimes we don't have. What are some of the qualities in an ally that we should look for as we build allyship? We need the support to get us to equity, but also how can an ally support us?
It's funny. I feel like it's less about finding people, at least for me anyway, it's just about finding rational people. It's less of like a us versus them thing. It's more just like, oh, who is rational and is less biased and sees the opportunity. I maybe I sound like cold and capitalist about this, but like for me, I'm not investing in women because I'm like trying to solve some social problem. I'm investing in women because they're smart and they have good ideas.
Right.
So
and it helps your bottom line at the end of the day. I mean, that's what you're investing in.
Exactly. So I think personally, I think that there's a whole group of people out there that aren't biased, that aren't even thinking about kind of the social justice issues, and they're just literally looking to like make the best investments, do the best work possible. And that's one type of ally. Obviously there's folks that are crusaders for a cause, but then there's a whole other group of people out there that actually just want to invest in the best people possible.
That's
right. And I would say I probably fall under that category.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Now you mentioned the word bias, and we all have biases, and I think it starts from how you were raised, right? So they might have some biases that they're not even aware of, that cause them to think differently than the folks that don't have a problem with bringing more women into technology. So I think that has to be remembered and considered as we go through finding allies, is that if there are biases, that they need to be aware of them and then work hard to kind of understand them, so that you can see this is just because I grew up in this neighborhood or I was raised this way or whatever. Then you can at least kind of decipher, why do I think this way? And as long as you have that rational mind, I think you can really see the bias very closely.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our blinders in various spots. So I think it's like less about not being biased. I mean, everyone's biased, as you pointed out. It's more about finding people who are open-minded to the fact that they might have biases,
right?
And are flexible enough mentally to change them. Like the biases go both ways. The biases cut in every direction. So I think it's less about, everyone came from a unique set of conditions and that frames their worldview in a way that probably is not representative of the whole. So it's more about like, are you open to new data?
Yeah, and being open is so important, because those new perspectives and those new thoughts are going to help your company, and it's going to help your you deal with your customers in a different way because your customers are diverse as well. And so having a diverse workforce and then having a diverse customer base really kind of falls together, and you can deal with those customers. You can work with them in such a better way once you understand how to do so.
Yeah, there's a thing that one of my exes taught me that she called it listening for the gold. It's a particular way of listening to people where, a lot of people are listening and they're just like waiting for their chance to talk, or they're looking for a mistake, or they're looking for a thing to shut down, or they're, they're they have such expectations that you can't even really call it listening. It's like,
They have an agenda already. Yeah.
And so I think, listening for the gold is a particular way of listening where you are just looking for the good nuggets. You're looking for the magic that, the truth that is whatever, somewhere in there and whatever someone's trying to say. And so it puts the onus, less on the communicator to be articulate, but rather the listener to find the value in what is being said. And I think that, just having that mindset and applying it to everyone you encounter, regardless of their shape or size or, background or privilege or not, is what I strive toward. Do I achieve it every day? Probably not, but it is the goal.
No, that's great. And really true. It's, again, the awareness and the open-mindedness that we need, right? I mean, it comes down to that.
Yep.
Now, what are some of the ways you are an ally to women in tech?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's my from a professional standpoint, it's just that I try to find the best opportunities, and I think women have a lot of great ideas and are building a lot of great businesses, and I guess that makes me a disproportionate investor in women, female entrepreneurs. I personally, my girlfriend is a very high flying tech executive, and I mean, since we're talking about this subject, I think it's interesting dating a very type A, sort of powerful, woman who, runs a fund that's multiple times bigger than mine. It's been interesting. This is veering into the personal here, but
it's okay.
It's like there are so many gender norms that I, as a white guy, are just not even aware of. I'm just it's like it is in the medium, it's in the ambient environment that I grew up in that I wasn't really aware of until I found myself in several, like, sometimes gender reverse roles, which has been quite interesting. And I will say it's not always the most comfortable position to be in, but I think from that standpoint, I just try to be open-minded and empathetic and not dogmatic and not insecure about, sort of these interactions. And I don't know. I guess from that perspective, I feel like I have a pretty balanced take and can see things from both sides, both personally and professionally.
I love that. I mean, I think that's what we want, right, in everybody, but not everybody is like that. So that's great that, I'm the same way. I mean, I ran a company for 32 years, and I never really looked at if I was hiring a male or a female. I always looked at the right person for the job. And it ended up being pretty even, really. It wasn't any one way. And so it really is that open-mindedness to think, okay, I'm looking to grow a company, I'm looking to be profitable, I'm looking to serve our customers, and those are the key things, right? And so when you find the right person, it doesn't matter whether they're male or female or what they are. It really just matters about their thoughts, their processes, their background, their energy. All of those things is what we hire for. So I love that. Do you think some of it came from your upbringing? Did you have brothers and sisters, and how did any of that kind of affect you in any way?
Um, yeah,
I was thinking maybe, like you had a very strong, you had strong parents that really did not distinguish between men and women and treated you and your brothers and sisters the same way. And that kind of brings that open-mindedness and doesn't even give it a thought on your side. But I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, totally. I mean, definitely my parents were very egalitarian, and my mom is, very strong, sort of has her own,
Mm-hmm.
is very independent.
Mm-hmm.
And, my sister's the same way. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess in that sense, it never was that strange to me
Yeah,
to
no, it's
have,
true. It's like
to be surrounded by strong women.
we raise women, girls and boys differently. If you think about it, when a girl cries, you bring her in, you hug her, and say it's okay, don't worry about it. And then when a boy cries, it's like, no, suck it up, don't cry. It's how we raise them too that makes a big impact on our lives later on that we don't even think about.
100%.
Yeah, very
100%.
interesting. So, how has your business helped companies during the pandemic and beyond? Tell us how business has changed today after the pandemic. So, with your Kumospace product, how have you helped companies? What are some of the changes that you've seen in those environments? And then, is it different than prior to the pandemic?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess, for me, I've been sort of running a remote company for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
My fund, we had a physical office, but I have a bunch of investors in Europe, and so I was always kind of working out of a plane and working remotely, and I've been doing video calls for the past 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
since way before the pandemic. So for me, I always sort of recognized and appreciated and took advantage of the benefits of kind of
Mm-hmm.
the flexibility of remote work. Um, and I always saw this opportunity to kind of live my best life, which for me meant, being professionally productive and living wherever I wanted, and being able to live in beautiful places and be physically active. And like,
Mm-hmm.
we're doing this podcast. I'm in Santa Teresa, Costa Rica right now.
Oh,
And,
that's awesome.
I've already had calls with both of my teams and, an entrepreneur this morning, and I got out into the water. So,
That's
um,
awesome.
I, I think one of the reasons we started Kumospace is we really saw the need was going to be not just kind of for digital nomads, right, which had been this growing trend for the past decade, but rather that, remote work was going to go mainstream. Because I think that once you saw from the pandemic, it hit, everyone took a gasp, thought that the world was going to tip over, and then it turned out it didn't. And in fact, everyone was incredibly productive.
Mm-hmm.
You saw
Mm-hmm.
tech stocks go through the roof,
Mm-hmm.
and realize that, okay, well, this isn't going anywhere. We can actually get as much, if not more, done for less cost. We can hire best talent all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to pay for expensive office space. We get the
Mm-hmm.
flexibility of getting to work from home. We don't have to commute. We can spend more time with our families.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't going back, and it wasn't going back in the bag. So we realized, okay, well, the tooling that we were using to do remote work, mostly Zoom and Google Meets and Slack, was not built with remote work in mind, right? It was built
Mm-hmm.
with the idea that you were still sitting in an office. So it
Mm-hmm.
really is good at transactional engagements, transactional, tasks, right? Like if we have a meeting, and, Zoom is great, right? But it didn't really solve all the other problems that an office space solves. So, an
Mm-hmm.
office is not just for doing work, it's for, um, socializing, it's for building relationships with your friend or with your coworkers. It's for tapping someone on the shoulder, getting a quick answer. It's for getting unblocked. It's for getting mentorship. It's for giving mentorship. It's for
Mm-hmm.
building culture, having events, um, and having like small little human interactions throughout the day that build relationships, which culture sits on top of. So
Mm-hmm.
we said, okay, what if we redesigned work software to facilitate all all of those benefits? And that was the origin of Kumospace is, a virtual office where you can do all the things I just mentioned: tap people on the shoulder, get quick answers, build culture, have self-expression, and see your team and support them.
Mm-hmm. No, that's so true. And I'm so glad that you see that the office was so much more than just work, because work you can do anywhere. But now you need that human interaction, the water cooler conversations, the, getting up and getting ready and mentally getting ready to work. Whereas sometimes, in the home, you may just get up and roll out of bed and roll into your desk. I don't know, but things are different now. And so people are adjusting and they love this remote work because it gives them that flexibility. I love that you said, you can do the things you love from where you are and from the places that you love, and you can still work. It doesn't change the work ethic at all. And so that's awesome. That's really, really awesome. So so it sounds like you're saying remote work is here to stay. And do you think companies are adjusting to this? What are you seeing when you try to sell your product to an organization that's considering more of a remote workforce?
Yeah, I mean, so I think our thesis is that anything that can be done over the internet will be done over the internet. And a lot of sort of white collar, quote unquote, desk jobs can be done at a
Mm-hmm.
desk, whether it's in an office or it's at home or it's at a
Mm-hmm.
cafe, right? And so those jobs will be done over the internet, which is not to say that there's not value from in-person interactions. Actually, I think if you look at events, post-pandemic, they spiked because everyone was just thirsty and
Mm-hmm.
deprived of in-person interaction. So we're not saying that there's not value in in-person interaction. In fact, we have a quarterly offsite where we get everyone together from the company, from all over the world together to connect in person, and we mostly just hang out. We do
Mm-hmm.
some strategy work, but we really just hang out to sort of build bonds and build informal relationships and build trust so that people work together more efficiently going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So we just think that it's sort of like the upside down classroom model you may have heard of. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of spending an hour all day lecturing students and having them go home and do homework, the idea is that you watch the lectures asynchronously and then you come in and you do the homework in the classroom, and the teachers can provide support. We actually think it actually looks like that remote work, the future of work looks more like the upside down classroom, in the sense that people do their work at home and then they come into the office to talk about their work and socialize about their work and
Mm-hmm.
build informal relationships.
That's
And
great.
so, yeah, that's our view of the world, and we think that right now we're in this kind of liminal transitory period where people don't really know. There used to be one size fits all for work. Everyone did the same job. Everything, it
Mm-hmm.
was 9 to 5, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, and every office and job looked the same. Now I think that's smashed, and we realize that, oh, actually, you should have a totally different setup depending on your type of work, your job function, your company, your stage of your company, and your life stage yourself. So you actually
Mm-hmm.
have all these different factors, and what the best optimal work setup looks completely different for different people at different companies, different stage companies and different functions. And I think that tools like Kumospace, virtual office, is just one of many tools that will facilitate this fragmentation of work styles.
That's great. So tell me a little bit about how that happens in Kumo space. Is there like a hangout space? How are you building those relationships in a virtual environment?
Well, so what happened was, when we first started building Kumospace, we didn't, it started because we used to do a networking event once a month for Charge Ventures, my venture fund, and I would
Mhm.
invite a bunch of angel investors into our office, and then we would share deals. And the pandemic hit, and everyone said, "Brett, why don't you bring that online?" And I said, "Well, I don't really want to do a Zoom presentation for 50 of my friends every month. That
Right,
wasn't the point. The
right.
point was that
Hmm.
people would start building relationships amongst each other." And
Hmm.
we realized there wasn't really any tool that let people have synchronous many to many conversations online. There wasn't a tool in 2020. It was crazy. There was no way to have a bunch of small groups chatting with each other and fluidly moving between groups. And so we built Kumospace, solved that problem. And we pretty quickly realized there was actually a bunch of different use cases. So people were using it for events. They were using it for as virtual offices. They were using it for just for education was a big use case, and they were also using it for socialization. People were having weddings and funerals and graduations in Kumospace. And so we, just sort of let the market show us where the opportunity was, and we, a lot of people were using us for events, and we realized that the problem that they were trying to solve by having, corporate events in Kumospace is they were trying to solve culture. They were trying to solve whatever was missing when we moved from the office to, work from home, Zoom and Slack. And, they were having these virtual happy hours, and they were having these virtual all hands, and they were, doing it because they were trying to build this kind of culture. And what we realized was that this was a great idea, and definitely that helped. But in practice, culture was built by the 9 or 10 little micro interactions that you'd have every day as a function of working in a physical office. And it couldn't really be replicated by one, virtual event a month, right? And people were, trying to solve something that needed to be iterative and daily with, something that was periodic and once a month and structure, and so we realized was, okay, we actually need to build a better place to work, in the metaverse, if you will, and a place to work on the internet, a place to show up on the internet, and a place to collaborate on the internet. And so we needed a place where, yeah, you could just sit and do your work. You don't need to be talking to someone every second. But then if you needed help, people could easily see that, and you could tap someone on the shoulder and instantly be talking. So, high bandwidth, low latency communication. And so that was the idea of Kumospace. And so, what we have now is we have people are spending 6+ hours a day in Kumospace. We've got millions of users, and, people are spending literally millions upon millions of hours in Kumospace, working every month. They're not always talking. They're not always having events. They're not always joking around. Sometimes they're just working, quietly in their office. But what's great is that if you're in Kumospace, people can see that you're there. They can see that if you need help, and they can, you can see everyone else, and you can just tap people on the shoulder and get answers to your questions.
I love that.
And that's a big difference. It's just like a physical office.
I love that. I love that you brought that element into the space, because really, like you said, there's not a lot of tools that have that, or any tool that I know of that has that. So that's awesome. Now, as an entrepreneur, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, it is a new way.
I was just going to say, yeah.
So as an entrepreneur, is there anything that you can think of that you wish you had known when you began your career that you learned over the years?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest learnings from me is that I started my fund 8 years ago, and when I started, I had never been a fund manager. I worked with some venture funds, but I'd never been a fund manager, and so I wasn't really sure. I thought, okay, I'm pretty smart, I'm pretty hardworking, I have a pretty good network of folks. I think I should be able to find some good investments, but it was a leap of faith, and I think it wasn't until 8 years later, the venture is a very long game. It takes a lot of time to see if, you're making good decisions or not. And finally, my fund data started coming back. We returned our first fund, we're, making almost a 5x fund. And, my second fund is going well. And, we've got IRRs in the 50s, 60s. And I got the data back that said, oh, you know what, you're pretty good at this. And then I started saying, oh, I have the confidence, I have the validation, and I'm much more confident. And in practice, that was actually just a huge waste of time, waiting to have to be validated by external factors before really believing in myself. And so I think my single biggest piece of information for entrepreneurs is don't wait for for the rest of the world to tell you that you've got a good idea, or that you're good, or that you're worth it. Um, you know, just believe in yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
we're watching the Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance, last night, and at
Mm-hmm.
the end he literally says, it starts with hope, and
Mm-hmm.
it starts with believing in yourself. And so my core piece of information is, start with hope, start with belief in yourself. Don't wait for other people to validate you, and just, follow through with that. And maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but that way, at least you won't waste all this time, waiting around for other people to tell you that you're worth it. And I think, just to tie it into our, the subject of the podcast, like, I think there's a big gender divide here,
Yeah, I was going to say the
actually.
same thing.
Where men, I think, are more prone to just, you know,
To just jump in and do it.
mansplain
Yep.
and believe
Yep.
and do it
The confidence
and
piece
think
is
that they're
huge.
great, and, have the confidence, even
Mm-hmm.
if it's not warranted. And,
Mm-hmm.
women, I think, are often, they want to wait till they're experts, and they
Yep.
want to have the validation and the credentials and all this other stuff before trying. And I think that, unfortunately, really holds them back, because you waste a lot of time waiting for this, validation, instead of just attacking your goal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's great advice, because confidence for women is so critical for success, because we have the qualifications, we have the mindset, we can do it, but we question ourselves, we have to prove ourselves, we have to get validation from others, and that takes a long time. So we hold ourselves back, I think. So that's really, really good advice.
Yeah, and you know what? Don't even care if you have the qualifications. Like, just do
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, because fake it till you make it is a saying, and sometimes you feel like you're doing that when you first start. I owned a business for 32 years. I didn't know anything when I started, but over the years I've learned, and perfected and got better as I went along. So very true, very true. Um, so that, I think, is great advice also for women considering a career in the tech industry, because confidence is a big piece, and just don't wait for validation, just do it, just jump in with both feet and do it. So last question for you, and this is kind of selfish in a way, because I love to travel. So I want to kind of understand, where is the most favorite place that you've traveled to and why, so that I can maybe add it to my bucket list if I haven't been there.
Ah, man, I think I'm approaching 100 countries now. So I don't
Wow.
have a favorite place, but one amazing place is San Sebastian in Spain, in the Basque Country. If
Mm,
you've never
mm.
been there,
I have not,
cannot recommend it
no.
enough. It's
Okay.
amazing, beautiful little seaside town, colonnaded boardwalk, and some of the best food in the world. Literally, I think they have more Michelin star restaurants than Paris,
Oh,
in
really?
a tiny little town.
Oh, wow. I am definitely adding that one, because I'm a foodie, so I love food. I love to travel, and this sounds like a perfect place to go to. That's amazing. So it's in Spain, you said, right?
Yep, it's in the
Great.
Basque Country, northern Spain.
Great. I love it. Um, Brett, this has been an honor and just such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for all your support for women in tech. Thank you for all that you do with your business to bring remote workers closer together. You're just doing an incredible job. So I really appreciate your time. Thanks again.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. It's an absolute pleasure to have the opportunity to talk with you and speak with your audience. And if I can ever help anyone out, if you're looking for investment, you're starting a company, it's Brett, Brett, at charge.vc. And if you're looking for a virtual office for your remote team to show up and work in every day, it's just Brett at kumospace.com. Would love to hear from you, and just mention that you are from Jennifer's audience. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I was going to ask you to share with our listeners how they can get a hold of you. So now you have that. We'll put it in the show notes. And so they'll be able to contact you. Thank you again. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Tech in the Right Direction. Please take a minute to subscribe or follow so that you never miss an episode. Also, don't forget to like, share, and comment. Thank you. See you next week.
From IT skill enhancements to end-user adoption training, Directions Training is your resource to help optimize the effectiveness of your technology investments. Over 500,000 students have taken advantage of our wide selection of technology and business training solutions covering the most popular applications today, such as Microsoft 365, Azure, Windows 10, and more. As a podcast listener, we invite you to take advantage of an exclusive offer. Receive 30 days of free access to our Microsoft official curriculum on-demand courses for IT professionals or end users. Visit us at www.directionstraining.com/podcast to claim this offer today. Hurry, this offer is only available for a limited time. Success is a journey. Ask for directions.